Hey, we've come to the end of another week. I hope it's been an awesome week for you, an encouraging one. And I just am so encouraged that you keep coming back. God bless you for it. And I pray that it's a bit of just a spiritual boost each day for you. It is for me. So this week we are continuing to talk about why God has put us on this earth. What are we here for? Begin the week by telling you that you have been planned for God's pleasure and wired for worship. And that I love that idea that we were created in the image of God, for God, by God. Your existence brings God pleasure, but especially when you seek to honor him, when you seek to obey him, when you seek to bring God pleasure, then that is worship. So today we're going to talk about our last pathway to worship. And honestly, this one sounds bad and sometimes it is hard, but it's one of my favorites, and that's sacrifice. Because I have learned that even though I might try to sacrifice, God always rewards me far more than I could ever give to him. In Romans chapter 12, verse 1, it says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercy of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. So we see that sacrifice, giving myself as a living sacrifice, not as a dead sacrifice, is spiritual worship. Worship is not just singing praise and worship songs on Sundays or in youth group. Worship is when I give up myself to the Lord. And now God, over the course of your life, God will call you to sacrifice a lot of things. I have at different times had to sacrifice friendships. I've definitely sacrificed finances. I've sacrificed time. I've sacrificed the talents and gifts that I have for the sake of others. But I feel like in every one of these instances, what felt like a sacrifice in the moment ended up being better categorized as an incredible investment in the Lord. And none of those investments have come back like the stock market. These just the best things in my life have been because of the sacrifices that I thought I was doing. I say that. It felt like a sacrifice in the moment, but in the long term, I see it wasn't a sacrifice. It was an incredible relationship builder with the Lord, something God used in my life and in others. In Mark 10, 28 through 30, Peter said to Jesus, see, we've left everything to follow you. And Jesus said, truly I say to you, there's no one who has left houses or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or lands for my sake and for the gospel, who will not receive 100-fold now in this time, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and lands with persecutions as well, and in the age to come, eternal life. So, friend, I want to ask you, what might God be calling you to sacrifice? And instead of looking at it like a drudgery, like the worst thing in the world, like God is trying to punish you, or God is trying to make you miserable, what if God is trying to transform you? What if God is trying to use you? What if God is trying to move you from where you are to a much more incredible place in your relationship with God and others? And what if that pathway is sacrifice? Jim Elliot was a missionary who spent years preparing and training to go be a missionary to the Auca Indians in South America. And when Jim landed, he with some other guys, when they landed, finally to reach this tribe that had never been reached before, and basically his first contact with them, they killed him. And Jim, you can imagine, what a waste is what people thought. This missionary trained and planned. He's a smart guy. He could have done anything with his life. And instead he goes to be a missionary and dies right away. Well, a couple of years later, Jim Elliot's wife, Elizabeth Elliot, as well as the other wives of the missionaries, go to this same tribe. And this time they're accepted and they're brought in and they bring the gospel. And then the same men who killed and murdered Jim Elliot became the spiritual grandparents of Jim's children. In Jim's journal, after he died, they found this quote that he wrote: he is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain that what he cannot lose. One more time. He is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose. So friend, today, as we close out this week, I want to ask you, what is it that God's calling you to give up that you're not going to be able to keep anyway? And what might God give you if you're willing to give that up? So sacrifice is not punishment. Sacrifice is worship. And sacrifice is one of the greatest avenues that God will transform and bless and use your life. So stop looking at it as a sacrifice. Start looking at it as an investment in the Lord. and worship that brings pleasure to God.